Team Daily right here in Phoenix, Arizona. Welcome to America Fest.
Welcome to America Fest, everybody. It's great to be here in Phoenix, Arizona. It's just great.
If Providence be with us in this battle for liberty, in this cause of liberty, we will prevail. So the point is, the church needs to have that attitude and say, we will fight and we will fight and we will fight. And if the Lord is with us, he will give us the victory.
And wait, that was just night one.
Yeah, just getting started at that point.
Just getting cranked up. Rick, it was a year ago, almost to the day, you and I were standing here rolling out biblicalcivics.com and getting people trained. How did it go? Let's look at the year and rewind. How did it go from your side?
I was thinking about that a while ago. It feels like it was just yesterday, but even in just the first 30 days, from the time you and I stood here and did that, we had literally thousands of FlashPoint Army people sign up, start doing the classes, start hosting the classes in their homes. So it was an immediate response, which tells me they're hungry for it, right? The people want to know, how do I treat my neighbor? What's the biblical way to treat my neighbor? I'm not going to run from politics. The gospel is living out the Bible in every area. So they're hungry for it. And, man, it's met the need big time.
It sure has. And you can still, if you haven't subscribed, you haven't gotten the material, go to biblicalcivics.com. You can either download it for a gift of any amount to Patriot Academy, or I was going to say Patriot Mobile. Better not say that.
It's all right. We like Patriot Mobile.
Yeah. Or you can buy the actual physical product and get it right there shipped to you. But no matter
this energy
what,
we're feeling right here,
Yeah.
you can do that at home with 5 or 6 people or 50 people in your church. So the same reason we come here to get energized,
right?
You can do that at home using biblicalcivics.com.
And one thing that we found over the year, Rick, is that people do it over. In fact, we were in that church in Mississippi a few months ago and found out there were people doing it again because they wanted to be a coach, but they wanted to make sure they knew it better. So I mean, it's really taken off in America. So thank you for doing that.
Well, thanks for partnering with me. I'm telling you, we've probably had at least 100,000 people go through it because of what you're doing on FlashPoint.
Isn't that amazing?
It's incredible.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, so I want to show you this interview. We sat down, we, me and I, not Rick, because he was off sleeping somewhere. Sat down with Representative.
I was right there. I was sleeping right behind that little. You couldn't see me on the camera.
With Representative Matt Gaetz from Florida, and I talked to him about a lot of things, but I started off talking to him about Speaker of the House McCarthy. It's good. Let me play this, and we'll be right back. I know you're going to enjoy my next guest, Congressman Matt Gaetz. Thank you, sir, for being with us today.
Thank you.
From the great state of Florida. I don't know if you know this, but you've been kind of in the news a lot lately.
I have seen that I've taken a good deal of criticism and accolades. I probably don't deserve as much of either as I've gotten, but I tell you what, I'm on a mission to change this Congress.
Good.
And there are going to be some bumps and some turbulence along the way, but we can't keep doing things the way we've always been doing them, because I really worry that we've gotten off track with bad processes, bad systems, and no matter which party is in charge, we got to have a way to individually review these programs in government and not be taking one vote on the whole government all at once.
All right, so let's talk about Speaker of the House. What do you think about McCarthy just deciding to bail out here midterm?
It's disappointing. We had a 4-seat majority, and through self-inflicted wounds, we've now reduced that to a 2-seat majority by expelling Santos and then, McCarthy kind of taking his ball and going home. And we need an ethic in Congress where it's not about you, it's not about your personal position or accolades, It's about the work and the mission. And all around us right now, we got the next generation of congressional talent. We've got people running in school board races and legislative races for Congress. And with the way I've tried to inspire and encourage them is to say, look, we need fighters. We need people who understand the challenges we're really facing as a country right now. A lot of the easy decisions, they're in the rearview mirror. If you look through the windshield, we got some tough work to do.
We do have tough work to do, but what our audience especially is watching, the fact that you're getting some stuff done. So thank you for that. What do you see as the next big hurdle that we got to overcome?
Well, we got to deal with this border. If we don't deal with this border, you got 10, 12,000 people every single day just getting waved into the nation, that is not a way for a society to continue to survive. And so we've passed a really unifying Republican bill, H.R. 2, and frankly, I think we should force the Senate to take it and force Biden to sign it. And if not, there are things that they want to keep funding and going that we're going to have to hold back on. So I think that getting that border secured, and one thing I'm kind of good at in Washington, using leverage.
Right.
We have to use leverage to get it done. And sometimes that means the willingness and the fortitude to say no.
Right. All right, another topic, the Biden impeachment inquiry seems to finally be getting some ground with James Comer and everything that's happening there. Do you think we're going to see something happen soon, or is that more of a long process?
You know, I'm going to be straight with you. We lost a lot of time here. Kevin McCarthy wouldn't approve the subpoenas.
And why would he not do that?
I think it was just a general desire to not really have any fatal wounds for the Biden administration, just some flesh wounds here and there. And so, I think that getting Mike Johnson in, ensuring that we were able to really get those subpoenas out the door. It's gotten us now to where we're able to take a vote. Every Republican voted for this impeachment inquiry, but I just worry with the 7 months we lost. I mean, 7 months, we didn't send one subpoena. We didn't send one. And I worry that's going to really truncate the timeline.
And I agree. In fact, our audience is, mainly conservative, but they're like, there's more disheartened people out there with the Republican Party than we expect the Democrat to be that way.
Yeah.
So why is it that we cannot seem to get a Republican Party that wants to get something done?
You know what? This is the big question. This is the big question. How do you get the disheartened, the disillusioned, and frankly, not even just Republicans, just regular Americans who love our country as we should and want to see us prosperous and successful? Right. How do you get those folks off the sidelines? Now, there's one theory of that case that we need to be more meek and more accommodating and more acceptable and never speak with a sharp tongue. But I want to go and evangelize these voters with boldness. I want to say, look, we have got simple solutions to big problems. Gas prices are too high. Let's drill for more oil. Right. We got too many illegals in the country. Let's deport them. We got fentanyl coming across the border. Let's hold China accountable. And if we did these things, we would be that bright light that would draw people in.
Exactly right. Well, and especially when we see things like Swalwell setting up a press conference for Hunter saying he's not going to testify. I mean, this is really frustrating to the American public that's in there going, what is the deal? Do we not have any teeth left in the Republican Party?
And I am very worried about what Hunter and Joe were doing, but I think everybody kind of gets what that was now. These guys weren't selling widgets. They weren't accountants, lawyers. They weren't doing a professional service. It was just influence peddling. And what I worry about with some of my congressional colleagues is their willingness to keep funding some of the cover-up. The impeachment's important, but draining the resources away from some of these entities that have been weaponized against the people, I think may be an even bigger fight than even the process of impeachment. Because if we have these hearings and folks watch me ask tough questions in the hearings, and at the end of the day, we still send them the check, then it doesn't really look like we're serious about the follow-through.
No, it doesn't. All right, we're crossing into 24 election year. What is your biggest concern about this election process?
Well, and you asked the question the right way, the election process. What's the next COVID, the next emergency? What's the next unilateral change in election law?
Right.
But one thing I think we've been successful with conferences like this is really getting people dialed in on how important that is. And we've seen some of our problem states improve, right? In Georgia, we now have better chain of custody laws. We have stronger photo ID requirements for voting. And I think that is the way to attack this thing, state by state, jurisdiction by jurisdiction. And we need good, honest patriots to step up and volunteer to be working in the election infrastructure so that we're not just reliant and weak and vulnerable.
Yeah, absolutely. As we move past with President Trump, do you think there's going to be an issue with Trump actually making it to the election day?
How crazy is it that we're having this? It's almost like an out-of-body experience. We're sitting here talking about whether or not the leading contender for President of the United States of America is going to be able to make it to the election. It is the most dictatorial paradigm that these folks have tried to marshal around President Trump with the lawfare and the smears. And I think it's truly, they're trying to beat him in the jury box and in the witness box because they can't beat him in the ballot box.
No, everything seems to bolster it.
And you notice how it's all projection, right?
Yeah.
They are doing the dictatorial things and then accusing him of being a dictator.
Exactly.
And maybe that goes back
Yeah.
to that first question, that we were discussing about what it takes to get people awake and engaged and driven to get our country back on track. And the stakes are so high.
It is. Joe Biden, you think he'll make it to the election?
I don't know. I kind of feel like every time Gavin Newsom shakes his hand, he checks his pulse.
Yeah, I think so too.
But it's almost like, are the Democrats even really serious with who? They're not trying to win an argument against us.
Right.
If so, they would not present like a dementia ward escapee as their nominee. I think they're really just trying to marshal that lawfare and the corrupt powers they have at their disposal. And that's why we've got to be so much more resilient and determined. I heard a candidate here earlier in the day say, we got to win outside the margin of fraud. And that's a pretty good strategy.
That is a good strategy. And I think let me go back to one comment. What we saw with everybody was when we were electing a Speaker of the House and they couldn't get McCarthy elected, and you're like going, what's the deal? Thank you. That was a great example of how the process should have been done. This is how we get a Speaker of the House. Nobody should be just walked right in and get it. So thank you for standing up and doing the process.
And I wouldn't want your viewers to get the impression that this is about any one person.
No.
I view a system.
The system is the point.
It is corrupt.
It is.
And it is broken. And it is resulting in the very pain that many of your viewers are having to endure.
Exactly.
The reason these interest rates keep going up is because we're facing $2.2 trillion annual deficits. And what I know is that the system we have now will not course correct that.
No.
And it will lead to a terrible falling off the cliff for our country that I don't want to see happen. So I'm here not to be destructive, but to try to rescue the system from itself in a lot of cases.
Congressman, thank you so much.
Thanks. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah. All right. There you go, Matt Gaetz. I think there's one quote in there about outside the margin of fraud, talking about the election coming up next year. But with me now is Victor Marx. Victor, thank you, sir. Thanks for joining.
Of course, Gene.
Let's talk a little bit about the fact that we're here. We've got an election next year. And what do you see, Rick? I'll go to you first out of this. What do you see as our biggest or the most important thing that we need to concentrate on leading into 2024?
Well, we talk a lot about election integrity, but I think there's a lot of great efforts in that front. They know we're watching this time, so I think it's going to be a lot better. But I think the biggest thing is what you've heard this weekend a lot: Christians realizing that voting is a part of their duty, as Charles Finney said. Politics is just part of a religion in a country such as this. So just getting the average Joe Christian to say, hey, I've got a job to do. I've got a role to play here, and I can't just expect Gene to go do it all.
Yep.
Can't expect Victor to go save everybody. We've got to all be a part of this.
Right.
And so average Joe Christian saying, I'm not just going to vote. I'm going to turn out at least 10 other people to vote as well.
Yeah, what do you think, Victor? I mean, I know you come at it from a different angle, but what do you see as the biggest issue we've got coming in next year?
I think it's Americans need to understand, and I'm piggybacking on you, there is no one else, and there's not another time.
Right.
It's now, and
That's
it's
good.
them. And I think, I may throw a wrench in some of this, but I think people need to wake up to the fact that there are enough nefarious characters in our country that could cause a stay in it all, where there is no election because civil unrest from the other side to stop or prevent us uniting together. So I think if people actually believe that's a possibility, they'll get tuned up a lot more to understand how important and vital their roles are.
Well, I think, I agree with you. I think Americans as a whole believe that's much more of a possibility than 3 years ago.
Right.
Go ahead. You were going to say.
Well, I was just going to say that's why getting together is so important. We keep talking about people getting together in these small groups and building community.
Right.
Because regardless of what happens in 2024, this is a long game. And we've got to think beyond 2024. And if it goes as crazy as you're talking about, which is a very real possibility. I used to say, no, it's not going to happen in my lifetime.
I did too.
And now it's like this could happen not just in our our lifetime, but this year. So regardless of all of those different things happening, you need community. You need to be finding people that you know share your values, share your beliefs, get in a good church that does, because this is not one you can ride out by yourself.
No, and in fact, Victor, Terry and I tuned into your, you did a Zoom call a while back, after you came back from Israel.
Right.
And you were talking about the importance of neighbors, knowing who your neighbor is, getting connected, who needs what in times of a crisis. Whatever that crisis may be, you need to know who you are. Speak to that a little bit.
Well, coming back from Israel, the one thing I knew without a doubt is that the least country we ever thought would be attacked effectively by terrorists was Israel.
Right.
But then I saw it. I saw what they did. And when I spoke to the SF friends of mine, IDF, who were in the kibbutz or even survived all this and actually have fought Hamas, I said, why did this happen? And people can stop with the conspiracy of a bunch of stuff. It's simply we underestimated our enemy.
Right.
And we weren't prepared. So they were only allowed 10 rifles per neighborhood with 50 rounds each. So that's when I came back and said, more than ever, people need to be part of or start a neighborhood watch. I'm reiterating what you fellows are saying with get to know your neighbors, get to find out who would need help in a time of need. Elderly folks, single moms, and start preparing practically for really what I think could be a dangerous civil unrest.
Yeah.
But that's how we stop the extremists from affecting us as we come together as communities.
So, and let's be real though, Rick, we've got even now still thousands of people coming across the border. It's a wide open door of illegals coming, and they're not Mexicans. They're not even South Americans.
Mexicans,
right,
I'll tell you,
yeah.
at this point, come in, because there's so many sweet families. We've been on the border. We've been all the way down to Colombia. We've been in the Darien Gap. But what we know and have seen firsthand are military-age style men coming in with backpacks, with directions, specific cities they're going to. There is an insurgency that has happened in the U.S.
Right.
And people know because of my background, I'm not one to hype anything. We've lived it.
Right.
But it's time for us to wake up and understand Americans better take all this very serious right now, or they're dividing. That's why all this racism is coming in and crazy. It's like, no. We have to be prepared to stop thousands of bad people that are in with very bad intentions.
Yeah.
You'd have to be a fool, literally, to not realize these open borders have created an incredibly dangerous situation. And actually, there's a proverb for that. I've said it a few times on the program. Proverbs 27:12, a wise person foresees danger and takes precaution. A simpleton or a fool walks blindly on and suffers the consequences. I mean, I've been the fool before. I want to be the wise person. And people that are watching, they need to be wise. Find community, build community, get trained. All of these things that you're talking about, Victor. I mean, we're blessed in America to have a Second Amendment, to have the ability to come together with like-minded folks, freedom of assembly, all of that. If they had a Second Amendment in Israel, maybe they'd have been able to stop a lot of this a lot faster.
Without a doubt.
Completely. And being paranoid, I need people to understand, because the tendency is if you're prepared, people think, oh, you're kind of paranoid. It's the exact opposite. I'm not paranoid because I am prepared. And when people think this is a myth, 911 is not your answer. And from personal experience, a couple of months ago, somebody tried to kill me here in America from about 3 feet away. Multiple rounds, and God protected me. But the response time for our local sheriff deputies was almost half an hour.
Wow.
For an active shooter.
Yeah.
I could have killed this guy 4 times over and buried him.
Yeah.
So people need to understand 911 is not the immediate answer.
That's the state of America has been lulled to sleep.
Yeah.
Because it was the answer.
And to rely on government, right? That's the mindset. Government will take care of me. It'll save me. It'll keep me safe.
It was.
All of that.
Yeah.
James Wilson signed both the Declaration and the Constitution, and he was an original Supreme Court justice. Yeah. He said, if you get robbed in your house, it's your fault. Every man's house is castle. Every man's the commanding officer of his house. That's the way he said it. And he basically is saying, if you want to, the only way the police would be there every time is if we were a pure police state. Police officer stationed in every home,
we don't want
every
that.
corner. We don't want that.
No,
it's
we don't want
our
that.
job to make sure that we're trained and ready.
All right, so Victor, last time you were on, we talked about you were in Israel and we were helping you with the plush toys that you were giving the kids that had the music in. Did you get a response from the FlashPoint Army?
Hey, I've got to say this to the FlashPoint Army. Unbelievable response. The best response we've ever had.
Wow.
In 20 years of immediate help. Thousands responded. My staff still says, you told us to be prepared, but we had no idea.
Yeah.
And we were able to not only help the kids then, we have another team in, and in 48 hours, our third team, which I'm leading, will be in with thousands of trauma healing toys that have scriptures and prayers that we will be handing out because of FlashPoint.
All right, so if they can still go to your website if they need to do more?
Yeah, VictorMarx.com is a way that you can still step in and help.
Listen, and this is this is a perfect example, Rick. We were talking about neighbors going together. You know, you came on the show that night, and we were just talking about what you're doing, and I'm like, oh, well, I want to help with that.
Yeah.
You're doing that, and you've already got a way to get them in there. You just need more of them. $10 per plush toy. Oh, heck yeah, let me help you. This is the way we win.
That's
when
exactly
when we come in together and help each other out.
And it's part of bearing one another's burdens. And I want to say this about Victor so that the people at home know it's not just this mission. These guys do this year-round, year in and year out, all the time. Stuff we never hear about, you probably can't even talk about. But when they go to your website and help, they're coming alongside you. They're literally locking shields with you and being a part of the ministry.
Thank you, Rick.
That's right.
For sure.
That's right. All right. Americans, everybody that we talk to, they're frustrated with their government. They're frustrated with their local government. They're even frustrated with their school board because they got crazy books in the library. And this is where, back to what you talked about in the beginning of the show, how we have to get involved even at the very local level, the neighborhood level. If we're going to change anything, we got to change it from the bottom up.
Yeah, I think oftentimes we look at the highest level of offices and go, that's our savior. This is what we need. And I don't think it's either and, but both and, because we need solid leadership all the way up. And if we just get back to the basics and hold people accountable by saying, that's a lie.
Yeah.
Or that's wrong. No, press people. Because politicians especially, or leaders, they're so good at the sound bites and the wiggling instead of somebody just pinning them to the wall saying, you said this, you promised this, you haven't delivered.
Right.
Yeah. And when you say basics, one of the things is we talk about this a lot, is just understanding the proper role of government. Like if they weren't doing all these things they're not supposed to do, it'd be a whole lot less money wasted, a whole lot less lying about those things.
Yeah.
But we have to know those basics ourselves, which is why we do the biblical civics, but also elect people at the local level. That's kind of the farm team, right? You're not going to immediately have a majority in Congress that gets all this. You've got to start people running for school board, city council, state legislature. And then last thing is putting the feds back in their box, and that's a state rep job. So that's somebody you can get to, or even folks at home that might need to run for state rep or state senate. So it begins at the local level. That's the only way we're going to solve it long term.
People at home, I hear it all the time. I would love to help, but I don't understand how things work.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to get involved. What should they do other than biblical civics?
Right.
I mean, they got to start somewhere. But I mean, that's what I hear more than anything is like, I would love to help. I just don't feel like I can do that.
Well, let's start at the most basic, simple level. This morning we were doing a workshop with Rob McCoy and Bob McEwen, and Bob talked about the fact you got 40 million Christians in America not even registered to vote. You got half of the other 40 million that are registered not voting, even though they're registered. So that sounds so basic, and we say it so many times.
I know.
People almost tune us out when we say it.
That's right.
But the numbers matter. We could be winning every election in America if we just had every Christian registering and voting, but they need to vote their values. So it's not just enough to show up. But we got to start with that basic thing. Get registered to vote. Show up to vote. Tell all your friends and family who you're voting for. Follow FlashPoint so you know
you're telling me I should talk about it at Christmas dinner.
100% you ought to be talking about it at Thanksgiving, at Christmas, politics and religion. That's what you ought to be talking about, not avoiding.
Hey, Victor.
The church is supposed to be separated from the state. Don't you know nothing?
I don't want to arm wrestle this guy. However,
that's the mindset.
That's right. They bought that lie.
They did.
Yeah.
And again, I like to keep it simple. There's benefits to a low IQ. That's why when I speak with this brother, I'm like, you tell him all the smart stuff. But it's simply this. The average Christian doesn't understand civics, their responsibility, so they kind of shut down. And you have pastors that will not encourage them how important it is as a person of faith. So what I'm about to tell you, super important. And I think this is a litmus test for our country, for Christians. Last week, 2 gay men, one of them is a pedophile pervert who's a very popular YouTuber. His name is Shane Dawson. And he's the one that said on his podcast, let's pretend I'm a pedophile. And he goes, what's wrong with Googling naked babies and then pleasuring himself to the photos? He goes, why is it illegal? Perversion. He talked about doing sexual things with his cat. They were just awarded 2 baby boys that are twins last Friday in the state of Colorado. Those children are in danger.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Huge danger. And this is a time in our nation where you can justify not being involved in a lot of stuff. But if pastors and Christians don't get involved and be part of what we're doing to rescue those twins
That's right.
from that monster, God have mercy on our country. Because again, you don't have to understand deep politics. You don't have to have major studies into civics. But you know what's right and wrong.
That's right.
And 2 twin baby boys being held captive, talk about human trafficking, being bought by surrogacy in the state of Colorado by these 2 gay men.
It's horrible.
It's horrible.
Well, the problem is people don't know right from wrong. They've been told that anything goes, everything's okay. Now, I do believe God writes right and wrong on our heart.
Sure.
But they've been lied to so much their whole life to believe that I can do anything, you just be you, whatever your truth is. And once you get away from, we hold these truths to be self-evident. Once you get away from a foundation that's strong, anything goes. The good news is people are hearing stories like this and going, that can't be right. And so they're starting to ask, where is the line and what is truth and what is right and wrong? So we've got a wonderful window of opportunity to bring God's truth to those people.
Well, Gene, isn't that what should motivate people to get involved?
Yeah, absolutely.
Into lawmakers and to make sure, because right now we're going to have a battle.
We are going to have a battle. And
Yeah.
I think, you mentioned pastors. I think pastors, a lot of them don't understand. The average church size in America is less than 75 people now. That's not bad. That's great, because that means that pastor is able to touch more people. Yeah. But that means he's also doing a job during the week and doing the church on Sunday. So he's got to, it's going to take all of us. You can't put it all at the foot of the pastor.
Correct.
But however, if he's the one in charge, he's got to be able to lead the fight and go, guys, we got to learn this. Let's get real. I don't know it. Let's learn it, and let's see what we can do to change things. We went to Pensacola the first part of this year and did biblical civics. You talked about that. Lee Wamsgans did about turning the school board. That was on a Friday. On a Monday, 2 ladies went back home and turned the school board around, had an election. It just timed out that way. And so it can happen, and it does happen. We just have to get involved. All right, let's go to the interview I did with Marjorie Taylor Greene. She stopped by yesterday. I want you to hear what she had to say. Marjorie Taylor Greene. All right, one of my favorite people in government, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Thank you for being with me again. All right, so I know we've talked about this before, but if you haven't gotten Marjorie's new book, aptly entitled Meeting. No, MTG. Need to get her book, and you can get that at mtgbook.com. But before we get into more what's in the book, I want you to tell me, it's been a slow week this week in D.C. What do you tell us some good news, but tell us what the truth is and what's happening.
Well, last week was quite a week. I was pretty upset having to leave Washington, where they passed the defense bill. Now, remember, that's the funding for the Department of Defense.
Right.
I didn't vote for it, couldn't support it. It put $600 million for Ukraine, which I had worked really hard to get the money for Ukraine out. It took away, and this is very upsetting, we had originally put in a 30% pay increase for junior military members.
Right.
They only make $22,000 a year.
Crazy.
These are ranks E1 through E6, and the final version, they took away the 30% pay increase. Outrageous. It was something unthinkable they put in there, was a clean reauthorization for FISA, Section 702, which has been abused by the federal government and used to spy on many Americans. In 2021, it was over 278,000 Americans the FBI spied on.
Wow.
None of that should have happened in our defense bill. And that was just one thing.
It was one thing. Why is it that this, I'm going to ask you a real easy question. Why is it that this government is just so bent on keep funneling money to Ukraine?
That's the question that I ask all the time myself. And in Washington, there's always pressure on members of Congress and senators to get things done. You got to fund the government. You've got to fund the military. You've got to fund. You got to reauthorize FISA. We wouldn't want a terrorist attack to happen. They always push for all these funding things. But here's the situation. We can't ever change Washington, D.C. until we stop all the bad things. And so we have to stop funding programs like FISA.
Right.
That's a complete abuse. It's a weaponization of government. We have to stop funding the Ukraine war. That is not, they're not even a member of NATO. Right. This is going to drag us into a further, bigger war over time. We have to put our border first, and we have to put the American people first. But many members of Congress and senators just grow tired and grow weak, and they're willing to get that vote done so they can go back home for Christmas or get back out of town.
Yeah. What about, let's talk about, we're coming into 24 election year, big year. What can the American people do? Obviously, we need them to vote right.
Yeah.
But what is it that we can do now? Our people are highly engaged. They want to just tell me what to do. I'll go do it. What should they be doing?
I think the most important thing we need to do right now is we need to engage in something Alex Jones has talked about for a long time, is the information war. And freedom of speech is under attack like never before in the United States of America. This is what they're trying to destroy, is free speech and truth. And it is true. It's an information war. And I think what most people can do is stop being afraid of the uncomfortable conversations with coworkers, family, and friends. Engage in these conversations.
Right. That's good.
They don't have to be arguments. Arm yourself with the truth so that you can prove to your neighbors, your friends, your family, your coworkers what the Biden administration is actually doing to our country and what we need to do to turn it around. Because I think Americans have stayed silent for too long, and that is really what is destroying our country. Is people are silent and they sit on the sidelines.
Right.
But this is the most important election of our lifetime, and we're on the verge of literally losing our country.
Sure. All right. So let's talk about the book. Again, why did you write it, and what's in here?
So I wrote this book. It was extremely important. When I came into Congress in January of 2021, the media, the Democrats, the entire Washington establishment created a character of me that doesn't exist. And then they sold that character 24/7 across America, across the news, across the world. And I wrote this book for a couple of reasons. One, to set the record straight. I talk about everything in there, from January 6th to going in the D.C. gulag and the jail there, visiting the January 6th events. I talk about a crazy headline that I never even said, Jewish space lasers. I peel the curtain back on Congress and tell a lot of truth that I think people deserve to know about what actually happens in Washington.
That's so good. All right, mtgbook.com. Get your copy. All right, so it's Christmas season. What's your favorite Christmas memory?
Oh, favorite Christmas memory is taking a special trip with my parents. They took my brother and I to Switzerland. We went to England, and we actually went to Germany, and we toured all around. And we didn't have gifts. It was that trip was so special, that time with my parents.
Family's important, isn't it?
Yeah.
Family's
very important. Very important.
Congresswoman, thank you so much. Always good to have you.
Thank you.
All right, so guys, her favorite Christmas memory was a trip to Switzerland. And parents, did you guys do that?
I've never been allowed out of Texas. Actually, I don't.
No, we wouldn't let you back in.
Yeah.
So what the deal is? All right, I want to kind of pick back up. We kind of skipped over Israel, Victor. So let's go back there. You recently came back. It's what is always concerning to me is how something so tragic makes the news cycle and then it starts to wane when it really is the fight is far from over. So give us an update on where you see things are over there.
Yeah, what's the shocking reality is what happened there can happen here at any point.
Right.
In a different way, but still the tragedy of bad guys attacking innocent people en masse. And that's what happened there. What people forget in America, unless you've been and spent time, because we were there the week after the massacre happened, is every day rockets continue to be launched from Hamas into Israel and then into people. And the Iron Dome does not capture it all. It's impossible. So I'm very concerned that America will fall asleep in a deeper sleep because it's not in the news cycle. That's why we have to keep it in front.
Right.
Or how they've allowed this mindset to come that somehow Hamas and the Palestinians aren't fully responsible in Israel. That's a tragic danger.
Yeah.
It is.
And they're undermining, even our own administration behind the scenes, undermining Israel and making it more and more difficult for them to do what needs to be done. And like you said, they try this narrative of, listen, the Palestinian people are being held captive by Hamas. No, 74% of them support not just Hamas, they support October 7th. They support what was done. So we need to either stay out of the way and let Israel do what they need to do, or support them like we verbally say we are. But Blinken and Biden are bad news for Israel right now.
Well, at the same time, last week, I think it was $200 million, if I remember right, that was awarded to send back over to Ukraine. Is this a fight we should be in, or should we be letting it go?
I personally, if I were in Congress, no, not a single penny more, not until our border is secure. Without a doubt. But, with regard to Israel, we're supposed to stand with Israel. We have a biblical command to do that. They're our only friend in the region. It's a totally different animal. And, of course, Biden tried to confuse all the issues by connecting those two and making it sound like Ukraine's troubles were the same as Israel's trouble. They're nothing like each other. But there's a whole lot more going on the Ukraine thing than what we're talking about here today. But anyway, I'm ashamed of our Congress sending hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine when we cannot even secure our own border, and let alone the fact that Joe Biden has been so involved politically there. The whole thing of impeaching Joe Biden is not about the nefarious money flowing here and there. He bragged on television about getting Ukraine to fire that prosecutor that was investigating his son. That's enough right there. That's it. That's a bribe, impeachable. That should be done and over.
So why doesn't it happen? Why didn't it happen?
I think Matt shared it with you. I mean, it's Republicans are so afraid that when they impeach Clinton, it cost them elections later down the road. So you still have these establishment Republicans that are afraid to do what needs to be done. And I don't care if they can get a conviction in the Senate or not. Do your job in the House. Do what you're called upon by the Constitution to do. And if you'll do that, even if they don't get a conviction, you're telling future presidents and vice presidents, stop gaming the system. You will be held accountable.
Well, that's so true. All right, Victor, what happens, though, when you're in a situation and you're afraid to do what should be done?
Well, you have a choice. Fall down in a fetal position, emotionally, or you just ask God for the strength.
Yeah.
And to empower you with a level of courage maybe you don't have.
Right.
And you do the right thing. It's being courageous isn't in the moment of a firefight when you're being mortared and shot at. It starts long before that Will you just stand up when it's uncomfortable or awkward and say, actually, that's not true? And on any issues, I remember just got finished working out here in the U.S. I'm in a gym and two guys are talking smack and about cheating and on their wives, and they turned and looked at me and started laughing, and I didn't laugh.
Yeah.
I said, I don't find that funny. And the same thing happened with Republican, very well-known group of guys I was with, leaders, congressmen and senators. And one of them's talking about how he's cheating on his wife. And they're laughing and drinking and smoking cigars, and they look at me. I'm like, that's not funny to me.
No.
And he was a well-known guy. You know, I ended up telling him, isn't your dad a preacher? I bet he's praying for you, man. Why don't you lead instead of follow?
Yeah.
So, again, men and women have to start with the basic things and build this foundation of your character so you are courageous in a time of life and death.
I'll give you an example. 90-pound girl that gets up at a school board meeting.
Right.
And she's one of our Patriot Academy grads, and she was speaking out against this scholastic situation, you know, where this entire book fair and all these horrible things they're putting into the books.
That's right.
And I get emotional thinking about it. In full transparency, in order to help other people, says, at 13 years old, a book exposed me to some of these things, and I got caught up in porn. I got addicted to it. The Lord's delivered me now, but it began with those books that the school allowed me to have.
Wow.
And people started attacking her from all over. It went national. People attacking this little girl. I mean, she's like 22, 23 years old. But she had the backbone. That 90-pound girl had the backbone to get up and tell that story in order to convince these people, look, you've got to change something. This is exposing kids at a young age to things that's going to cause them problems. So that's courage right there.
That's
and we
real
need more
courage.
like that.
Yeah, we do. We do need courage. All right, so speaking of the next generation and how we're going to see things happen, I sat down with Christian Collins, a great young guy, and he actually is right there outside of Houston, Texas, Church of Champions, and he's doing some great things with the youth for Texas. Watch. With me now is Christian Collins. Christian, welcome back to FlashPoint.
Gene, thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, let's talk about the Texas Youth Summit. Help everybody understand what really happens there.
Well, thank you so much for that question. Texas Youth Summit steps in the gap, and it combines ministry, education, and politics. And we bring in youth from all across Texas. And we've been doing it for 5 years now, going on our 6th. And we educate them on Judeo-Christian, conservative values, freedom, limited government, fiscal responsibility, American exceptionalism, these values that we hold dear. And high school and college-age students are just so fired up to save America. And we bring in influencers, faith leaders, pastors, elected officials to speak and pour into these students. And it's so exciting to have partners be a part of this event where the young people get connected and get involved in the movement.
So how do you, I mean, we see on the mainstream media and the news about the younger generation, they're the ones picketing in the streets. They're the ones being in Antifa riots and all this stuff. But what you're saying is that's not the whole story.
No, young people, they want to be involved in something bigger than themselves. Most of all, they want to make a difference.
Right.
And the way that they feel that they can do that is by getting involved in issues. And that's why so many young people are confused and they got involved in the BLM riots, or they're getting involved in these pro-Hamas riots. And oftentimes they're just confused. And they need to understand the core values that have made our country great.
So how do you make that jump? How do you train them into that?
Well, we go to where they are. We spend time on college campuses. We get them, young while they're involved in their church youth group. Because if they don't have a firm foundation before they go off to college, if their house is built on the sand and not on the rock, then oftentimes they're going to be swept away by false doctrine. I know this because it happened to me for a season while I was in college. There was a time where I thought that I was liberal, and I had well-meaning liberal professors.
Okay, so let's go there. Yeah. How did that happen? What happened that made you think you were that direction?
Well, I still am a pastor's son.
Sure.
My dad is an awesome man of God, and you guys have actually done great work partnering with my dad's church there in Houston. Awesome to have y'all at that church. I consider myself someone that is well-intentioned, and I care about people. I'm altruistic. And so there was a season where my professor, she was an awesome, awesome person. And she was liberal, though, and she'd show us Michael Moore videos, and I didn't really know what I believed on politics. I knew what I believed on ministry because my parents had always taught me that, but I didn't know for sure what I believed on politics, and for a season I thought that I might be a liberal. Thank God for Rush Limbaugh. My dad turned me on to Rush Limbaugh, and that straightened me out.
He straightened a lot of people out.
Yeah.
I think that's very interesting because what you're saying is there was really a lack of the previous generation training the next generation to understand, not just from the church standpoint of this is why we believe what we believe, but how that falls into politics. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly, and there's so many scriptures that are in line with this, and you think about how the Israelites would pray for their land, that it would prosper. It talks about this in the book of Jeremiah, where they'd pray for their land and it would prosper. We have to do that here in this country, and for that to happen, we have to have godly leaders as well.
Yes, we do.
When the righteous are in authority, the scripture says the people rejoice. When the wicked rule, the people mourn. And so that's why it's so important to have God-fearing people in places of authority. And it's so important that as Christians, we get involved in the political process to elect those leaders who know what's right.
Yeah, all right. So, I mean, I love the fact you quoted Proverbs 29:2 there. How does this generation help the younger generation make that so that we don't lose a generation? And I know that's what you're doing. How can my generation help you?
Well, I think it all starts with the family. If parents can spend more time around the dinner table, that's kind of old-fashioned these days, but if they can spend more time around the dinner table, talking to their kids, engaging with them, asking them, hey, what did you learn at school today? Because it's not just happening at colleges, it's happening at high schools. And that's why so many parents have been so mobilized and fired up to fight and get involved in school board elections, run for office. But it's important that they're engaged with what curriculum, what they're learning at schools. That's where they can start. If they can be privy to what they're looking at on their cell phones, because there's a lot of indoctrination that happens on TikTok. I know this because there's a particular person that I came in contact with. She was a pastor's daughter. And for a season, she thought she was supposed to be a male. And so she was going to have sex reassignment surgery. Thank God she never did that. She did not take testosterone or anything, have any sort of surgeries. And to this day, she's been turned around, and she spoke at the Texas Youth Summit in a breakout section last year. But that can happen, and that's how vulnerable students are if they don't know why they believe what they believe. So spending time with your kids, knowing what they're learning at school, knowing what they're learning at TikTok. Because back in the day, it used to be television, but now it's the phone, it's the tablets,
True. So basically, we just need to parent and be good grandparents.
If you're simplifying it, you need to be involved in your kids' lives. That you need to have a personal relationship with them and invest in your children.
So what's the goal for you now? I mean, you've got Texas Youth Summit. It's going to. Do you see this moving across the country?
Well, I'm here supporting Turning Point USA. I'm at this conference. I'm just honored to speak here on Tuesday. I'm focused on Texas, laser focused on Texas. We want to be involved in the DFW market as well as
awesome.
We've done events in South Texas with Myra Flores, Monica De La Cruz, and Cassie Garcia last year when they were all running for office, and we did this at a church. We've done a lot of our events at churches, and of course we do them at hotels. Y'all were a part this year. We want to own the Texas market and engage the people of Texas because it's such an important state that, as they say, as Texas goes, so goes the nation. It's such an important state, and people see it as bright red, but our cities are actually, they're becoming more blue.
They are.
And in a nonprofit term, we say, liberal or conservative.
Yeah.
But what we really want as Christians, more importantly, is people that their hearts are turned back to God. Scripture says when we humble ourselves and pray and seek God's face, then He will hear from heaven and heal our land. And when we repent and we turn back to God as a nation, He's going to bless us. I believe He's not done with America. And I'm just fired up to have some small part in making a difference in our state, because the youth, they really are wanting to make a difference in this season of their life. They don't want to wait till later on down the life. And they find that there are so many older people that want to help them. You asked how older people can help? Pay it forward.
Yeah.
Give some young person a little bit of your time. If someone wants to take you out, which would be a really prestigious opportunity,
Sure.
to coffee or lunch, and and you pour into them in the media, part of it. There's so many young people that want to be the next Gene Bailey.
Yeah.
And so invest in that next generation.
Sure.
And pour out your wisdom and your expertise and knowledge, with your world, and you'll help them and you'll pull people up, and
That's wonderful.
that's how you can help people.
Christian, thank you so much. Texas Youth Summit, keep up the good work.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me on. Appreciate y'all's ministry and all that y'all do. God bless you.
Christian Collins, what a great guy. Yeah, I'm really, it gives me
Solid.
It makes me
Solid,
feel
man.
good,
That was good.
All right, so we're about out of time. I want to go one last time. You got like 35 seconds. Go ahead, wrap it up for me.
Well, I'll just say it's an exciting time here
Yep.
in America for Christians to take a stand. And one of my favorite generals said it when surrounded by the enemy in Korea. He just said, we're surrounded on every side, which makes it easy for us to shoot any of them. So it's time for Christians to stand up and be bold,
Yeah.
and share their faith and quit being afraid of darkness.
Yeah, I love that. Go ahead.
Hey, man, it's a window of opportunity. The left has gone too far, so we have millions of Americans paying attention, so we've got a window to convert them
Do you really
to
think
the
that
principles
they've
of
gone
liberty.
too far now?
Oh,
They're
man, that's why
exposed
people
now?
are waking up. The
Yes.
pain is starting, right? The soft men have now created for hard times. We're
Right.
at the beginning of that cycle. We have a chance to interrupt that cycle by bringing these principles back and getting people involved
3,000%
in exactly.
on that,
yeah.
brother.
That's so good. All right. Thank you to Christian Collins, of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Matt Gaetz, representative. And, of course, to you guys, thanks for coming on, Victor, and Rick, too.
Always.
No.
Hey, I'm as tall as you as long as we're in these chairs.
Yeah, we're in these chairs. Listen, we're going into the Christmas week, and listen, you need to stay engaged. And now we talk a lot of tough topics on the program. We talk about a lot of things that get you frustrated. Here's the main thing, and Christian referred to this in the interview. Stay focused on what is right, what is true, what is pure and good and lovely and of a good report. And that's the word. Stay in contact with your holy God himself that keeps you centered and going the right direction. Listen, this is not just a political problem in this nation, it's a spiritual problem. We correct the spiritual problem, the political problem will come in line, and you and I can do this. So let's pray real quick. Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you for every person watching them celebrate the birth of Jesus this week. And Father, I thank you that as we go forth from this place, we go forth in strength, we're rejuvenated, in courage, honor, and loyalty as we step out to do what you've called us to do. Remember, it only takes sometimes just one. Just be the one that's willing to step out and say, I'll stand up for righteousness. I'll stand up and do the right thing. Like so many things we've talked about today, one person standing up and making a difference can change absolutely everything.